Hello everyone. Welcome to ABCGH Daily. Hope you are all doing well. Before we start today's video, I have a small request for you. If you are new to our channel, then click the subscribe button now and hit the bell icon so that you don't miss any updates from Port Charles. And if you liked the video, don't forget to give it a like. Friends, I won't be able to sleep tonight if I don't talk about today's General Hospital drama. Nathan West's miraculous return on one hand, and Willow's dark political move on the other, all of this has Port Charles in turmoil. So, without further ado, let's jump straight into today's main discussion. The night in Port Charles was not merely dark, it was suffocating. A thick, rhythmic fog rolled off the harbor, swallowing the docks and crawling up the cliffs toward the isolated grandeur of Windermere. On this night, the silence was shattered not by the waves, but by the sharp, staccato cracks of gunfire. Drew Cain, a man who had survived war zones, kidnappings, and memory wipes, found himself staring into the void of a barrel. The bullets sent by Gen Sidwell's mercenaries were not meant to warn, they were meant to erase. As the lead tore through the air, Drew felt the world slow down. He felt the impact, a burning, searing heat that blossomed across his chest. As he collapsed onto the cold pavement, his last thought wasn't of power or politics, it was of the betrayal he felt in the very air he breathed. The sterile limbo of General Hospital. Hours later, the fluorescent lights of the General Hospital ICU hummed with a clinical indifference. Drew Cain lay tethered to a dozen machines, his breath a mechanical hiss provided by a ventilator. Outside his door, the hallway was a battlefield of a different kind. Michael Corinthos paced the floor, his footsteps echoing like a ticking clock. His hair was disheveled, and his expensive suit was stained with Drew's blood. For Michael, this wasn't just about a family member being shot, it was the ultimate proof of his own inadequacy. For years, Michael had positioned himself as the strategist, the man who could outthink the villains of Port Charles. He had promised Drew protection. He had promised to neutralize Gen Sidwell. "I had it under control," Michael whispered to the empty air, his voice cracking with a mixture of guilt and exhaustion. The security detail was in place. The legal injunctions were filed. How did they get past the perimeter? What Michael didn't know, what he couldn't possibly conceive, was that the perimeter hadn't been breached from the outside. It had been dismantled from within. Every guard he hired had been bribed or threatened. Every legal maneuver he made had been leaked. Michael, the golden boy of the Quartermaine and Corinthos legacies, was playing a game of chess while his opponent was burning the board. The arrival of the new Willow. The elevator doors at the end of the hall slid open with a soft chime. Michael turned, expecting to see a grieving Nina or a frantic Carly. Instead, he saw a vision that froze the blood in his veins. Willow Tate stepped out. But this was not the Willow the fans had come to adore. There was no soft cardigan, no gentle smile, no trace of the saintly nurse who lived for others. She was dressed in a sharp, charcoal-gray power suit that seemed to absorb the light around her. Her hair was pulled back into a tight, severe bun, and her makeup was flawless, sharp, angular, and predatory. "Willow?" Michael stammered, moving toward her. "Thank God you're here. The doctors, they say Drew is stable, but the internal damage is..." Willow didn't stop. She didn't even look at Michael as she walked past him toward the observation window of Drew's room. Her eyes were fixed on the man behind the glass, but they held no pity. "He looks weak," Willow said. Her voice was different, lower, devoid of the melodic kindness that used to define her. "He was shot, Willow. He almost died." Michael cried, confused by her coldness. Willow finally turned to him. The look in her eyes was one of pure, unadulterated calculation. "He almost died because he was careless, Michael. And he almost died because you are incompetent. You spent millions trying to play hero, and all you did was provide Gen Sidwell with a target." Michael stepped back, as if she had slapped him. "I did everything I could. I have a plan to retaliate." "Your plans are failures, Michael." "They are the desperate scrambles of a boy playing at being a man," Willow interrupted, her voice cutting like a razor. While you were busy crying over bloodstains, I was meeting with the board. While you were filing police reports, I was securing the endorsements of the congressional committee. The shift of power. The realization hit Michael like a physical blow. He looked at the woman he loved, the mother of his children, and saw a stranger. What are you talking about, Willow? Drew is the candidate. He's the one the people want. Willow let out a short, dry laugh. The people want a winner. They don't want a man who spends his time in a coma. Port Charles is tired of mob wars and survivors. They want stability. They want a new legacy. She leaned in close to Michael, the scent of her expensive perfume masking the smell of the hospital's antiseptic. I spoke to Jen Sidwell, Michael. She realized that killing Drew was messy. But replacing him? Replacing him with someone she can negotiate with? That's business. You made a deal with the woman who shot him? Michael shouted, his voice echoing through the ward. I made a deal to save this family's future, Willow whispered. Because you were too weak to do it. From this moment on, the balance of power in Port Charles has shifted. Drew is the past. You are a bystander. And I am the future. As Michael watched, Willow turned back to the window, staring at the unconscious Drew Cain. In that moment, the saint was gone. The victim had become the victimizer. Michael realized with a sinking heart that he hadn't just lost his plan, he had lost his wife to the very darkness they had spent years fighting. The air in the Metro Court's private lounge was thick with the scent of expensive bourbon and the underlying tension of a city on the brink of a revolution. While Michael sat in the hospital, paralyzed by his own failure, a different kind of surgery was taking place here. Nina Reeves sat by the fireplace, her eyes glowing with a mixture of maternal pride and predatory hunger. Across from her sat Willow, the woman she once fought, but now her greatest masterpiece. You handled him perfectly, Willow, Nina said, her voice a low purr. Michael has spent so long being the hero that he forgot how to look for the knife in his own bed. He still thinks this is about Drew. He doesn't realize it's about us. Willow swirled the dark liquid in her glass, her face a mask of cold ambition. Michael is a relic, Nina. He thinks Port Charles runs on honor and family names. But I've learned from the best. I've learned that the only thing that matters is the seat at the head of the table. Drew was a placeholder. Now, he's a liability. The Secret Alliance. The fans of General Hospital had spent years watching Nina and Willow at each other's throats. But the 2026 timeline had birthed a monster that no one saw coming. Realizing that Michael was too principled to take the ruthless steps necessary to secure the family's dominance, Willow had turned to the one person who knew how to play dirty, her mother. Nina had provided the capital. She had used her connections at Crimson and her vast wealth to buy the silence of the congressional committee. Together, they had crafted a narrative that would paint Drew as a tragic, broken man, unfit for office, while positioning Willow as the brave, saintly wife stepping up to carry the burden for the sake of the city. Jen Sidwell is satisfied, Nina noted, checking her phone. The bullets at Windmere were just the opening act. She needed Drew out of the way to clear the path for her shipping routes, and she realized that a Congresswoman Willow Tate is much more flexible than a war hero with a conscience. Willow smiled, a sharp, mirthless expression. Drew thinks he's coming home to a hero's welcome. He doesn't know I've already signed the papers to liquidate his personal assets into a trust under my name. By the time he can walk again, he won't even own the shoes he's wearing. The manipulation of the fallen. 2 days later, Drew Cain was moved from the ICU to a private suite. He was awake, but the spark in his eyes was dimmed by pain and heavy sedation. When Willow entered the room, she shed her power suit for a softer, more familiar floral dress. It was time for the saint to make one last appearance. Willow. Drew rasped, his hand shaking as he reached for hers. I saw the news. They're saying I'm withdrawing? I never said that. Willow took his hand, her touch cold as ice despite her warm smile. Oh, Drew. You're confused. The trauma, the doctors say the brain needs time. You told me that night, before you went under, that you couldn't do it anymore. You said the city wasn't worth your life. I didn't. I wouldn't say that, Drew whispered, panic rising in his chest. I have the recording, Drew, Willow lied, leaning in close to his ear. And I have the witnesses. If you try to fight this, people will think you've lost your mind. They'll look at the brain damage from your past, and they'll say Drew Cain is unstable. Is that the legacy you want? To be remembered as a man who went mad in office? Drew stared at her, the realization dawning on him. The woman who had been his moral compass was now the one steering him into a storm. Why are you doing this, Willow? After everything. Michael, the kids. I'm doing this for the kids, Willow snapped, her mask slipping for a fleeting second. So they never have to be victims. So they never have to rely on heroes who get shot in the street. I am protecting the future, Drew. A future where I hold the power, and you stay quiet and play the part of the tragic survivor. The public betrayal. That evening, the lobby of General Hospital was swarmed by the press. Every major outlet in Port Charles was there, cameras flashing, microphones poised. Michael stood at the back of the crowd, his heart sinking as he watched the podium. Willow Tate stepped forward. She looked radiant, yet somber. She held a handkerchief in one hand, dabbing at eyes that were suspiciously dry. Members of the press, people of Port Charles, Willow began, her voice trembling with a practiced fragility. It is with a heavy heart that I announce my husband, Drew Cain, has suffered injuries far more severe than we initially hoped. While he is a fighter, the road to recovery is long, and his first priority must be his health and our family. A murmur went through the crowd. However, Willow continued, her voice suddenly gaining a new, steel-like strength. Drew has asked me, no, he has charged me, to ensure that his vision for this city does not die. Therefore, with the full support of the committee and my family, I am announcing my candidacy for the congressional seat. I will be the voice he can no longer provide. I will be the strength he has lost. From the shadows, Nina Reeves watched with a triumphant grin. In the back, Michael Corinthos felt the world collapse. Drew Cain, watching from his hospital bed, threw his water glass at the television screen, the glass shattering just as the camera zoomed in on Willow's victorious, hauntingly beautiful face. The balance of power hadn't just shifted. It had been stolen. This is Chapter 3 of the saga. This chapter explores the massive fallout in the city, the growing resistance led by Alexis Davis, and the internal war that tears the Corinthos and Davis families apart. The fall of the Titan, the dark ascension of Willow Tate. The announcement of Willow Tate's candidacy didn't just break the news, it broke Port Charles. By the next morning, the city was a house divided. At Kelly's Diner, the air was thick with heated arguments. Longtime residents who had once viewed Willow as a miracle survivor were now whispering the word usurper. On social media, the hashtags #TeamWillow and #JusticeForDrew were trending globally, creating a digital battlefield that mirrored the tension on the streets. But while the public argued, the true war was being waged in the mahogany-lined offices of the city's elite. The Saint of Port Charles was dead, replaced by a political powerhouse that was systematically dismantling anyone who stood in her way. The resistance rises, Alexis Davis steps in. In the quiet library of the Davis house, Alexis Davis sat surrounded by law books and old files. She had watched Willow's press conference with a sinking feeling in her gut. As a former attorney and a woman who had seen every type of power grab in Port Charles, she knew exactly what she was looking at. This wasn't a wife stepping up for her husband, this was a coup. She's using the grieving wife trope to bypass the democratic process, Alexis muttered to her daughter, Molly Lansing Davis. It's brilliant, it's cold, and it's dangerous. If Willow gets that seat with Nina Reeves and Jen Sidwell backing her, this city won't belong to the citizens anymore. It will belong to a syndicate. Molly, usually the one to advocate for the law, looked at her mother with concern. Mom, Willow has the momentum. She has the sympathy vote. Who is going to stand against her? Michael is paralyzed, and Drew is effectively a prisoner in his own hospital room. Alexis stood up, her eyes flashing with the old fire that had made her the most feared lawyer in New York. I will. Laura Collins is already being pressured to certify the appointment. We need a countermove. We need someone with the legal pedigree and the history to challenge her. I may have been disbarred and disgraced in the past, but I know the charter of the city better than anyone. The confrontation at the Metro Court. The first major battle took place at the Metro Court restaurant, the neutral ground where Port Charles's elite went to bleed. Alexis, flanked by Molly and Christina, walked in to find Willow and Nina celebrating over a lavish lunch. The sight of them, smiling, clinking glasses of expensive champagne while Drew lay broken just blocks away, was the final straw. Alexis approached the table, her presence commanding silence from the surrounding diners. Willow, Alexis said, her voice steady and echoing. I've seen a lot of people change in this town, but I never expected you to become a caricature of the very people you used to fear. Willow didn't even flinch. She took a slow sip of her drink and looked up at Alexis with a chilling indifference. Alexis. I assume you're here to offer your congratulations? Or perhaps you're looking for a job? I hear the city's legal department will be looking for experienced help. I'm here to tell you that I'm filing a formal injunction against your appointment, Alexis countered. Drew Cain has not legally abdicated his seat. Those papers you had him sign while he was under heavy sedation? They won't hold up in a court of law once I prove medical incompetence. Nina Reeves stood up, her eyes narrowing. Careful, Alexis. You're playing with fire. Willow is the future of this city. You're just a ghost of its past. Don't let your jealousy of my daughter's success ruin what's left of your reputation. This isn't jealousy, Nina. It's a wake-up call, Alexis replied. You've turned Willow into a weapon, but every weapon has a recoil. Port Charles won't just sit back and watch you turn the congressional seat into a family business. Willow stood up then, leaning across the table until she was inches from Alexis's face. The mask of the saint was gone, replaced by a predatory sharpness. Alexis, you think the law is a shield. But in this town, the law is a tool. And right now, I'm the one holding it. If you move against me, I will dig up every mistake, every bottle, and every ghost in your closet. I won't just defeat you. I'll erase you. The Davis girls divided. As Alexis walked away, the tension didn't stay at the restaurant, it followed them home. Christina, who had been trying to play peacemaker, was torn. She had been spending time at the Quartermaine mansion, trying to help Cody Bell navigate his guilt, and she saw the chaos firsthand. Mom, are you sure this is the right move? Christina asked once they were alone. Willow is powerful now. If you lose this fight, she could make sure you never work in this town again. She could target Molly's career at the DA's office. She's already targeting the city, Christina, Alexis said, her voice heavy. If we don't stop her now, there won't be a DA's office worth working for. It will all be under the control of whatever weapon Willow decides to use next. The failed plan of Michael Corinthos. While Alexis prepared for a legal war, Michael Corinthos attempted one last, desperate plan to reach Drew. He tried to use his status as a Quartermaine to bypass the new security Willow had installed at the hospital. He wanted to get a second medical opinion, to prove that Drew was being over-medicated to keep him compliant. But when Michael reached Drew's room, he found the locks changed. Standing guard was not a hospital orderly, but one of Jen Sidwell's private security contractors. Step aside, Michael commanded. I'm Michael Corinthos. My family owns a significant portion of this facility. The guard didn't move. I have orders from Mrs. Cain. No visitors without her express written permission. Including family. Michael realized then that he was no longer the Prince of Port Charles. He was a stranger in his own kingdom. Willow hadn't just taken Drew's seat, she had taken his identity. She had become the gatekeeper of his life. As Michael stood in the sterile hallway, defeated and alone, he received a text from an unknown number. It contained a single image, a photo of a secret ledger belonging to Jen Sidwell. Under the image was a message: the bullets were paid for by a trust. Follow the money, Michael. It doesn't lead to a mercenary. It leads to a nurse. Michael's blood ran cold. The war was no longer about a seat in Congress. It was about a murder that hadn't quite succeeded.